Hello everyone, this is Carol. Thanks for joining me. We're going to continue our pathways to self-awareness. Today we're going to talk about self-esteem. And for those of you who may just be tuning in, this is a series I started a little ways, so probably a month ago. And it is from a workshop that I facilitated, and I'm probably going to look at my cheat sheets as I talk about this, because I do want to make sure that I give you all the information that I shared during the workshop. Okay, previous to that, I had a video talking about my own journey to healing, and I talked about addictions. I'm going to look at that a little bit deeper today, because psychoanalysts believe that addictions have many components. But an addiction is formed as a solution to a problem that you had. So what does that mean? It means that you formed an addiction to stop feeling the way you did, to numb out, as a distraction, as a deterrent, as temporary relief from a bigger problem. So what happens when we give up the addiction is the initial problem surfaces. And anyone out there who's ever been in the 12-step program knows that their facilitator or counselor said, if you are dual addicted, please only give up one addiction at a time, because it's just too much to do it all at one time, because not only are you dealing with leaving that addiction that help you cope, but then consciously you resurface the initial problem, and then you've got to work with that. So having good self-esteem and self-confidence helps us to be able to cope with a problem or what is going on in our lives much better than if we didn't have self-esteem. So there's many disadvantages of not having self-esteem, and that's what I want to share with you here today. It limits your ability to open yourself up to others. It also sometimes limits you from really being your authentic self. And you got to really look at that, because that's powerful in and of itself. Because when you are not yourself, just think of the stress that incurs in your life when you are imitating or trying to be who you're not. You may have difficulty in expressing your sexuality. And most often it affects how we view ourselves as well as our successes in life. By that, let's look at, do you identify who you are by what you do? When you apply yourself and you work and you accomplish something, are you always waiting for someone to validate it, to get recognition from, and then you feel good about yourself? Your self-esteem comes from that accomplishment. And how you allow, it's very important on how you allow others to treat you. And again, very important is, how do you treat yourself? Are you kind to yourself? Or do you have a little critic that sits on your shoulders and says, you didn't do that right, you didn't say that right, you didn't look right, this was wrong, shoulda, coulda, woulda. Those are very, very stressful for us as we go about our daily lives. And the more stress we have, the more ways we look to cope and get rid of stress. All right, some obvious signs of low self-esteem are becoming a workaholic, of course, substance abuse, compulsive buying, compulsive shopping, compulsive gambling, trouble with relationships, especially intimacy, commitment, having affairs, that's another one. Those are all ways of looking at signs. And what I want to share with you today is how to kind of take inventory of the possibility that you may not have the best self-esteem by answering these questions. And I would suggest that you write them down and that you really look at them honestly and take your time to answer them. There's 3 of them. The first one is, who am I? And it may be a couple sentences, but it's really imperative that you look at that in a way, and here is a clue, that you are not who you're married to, and you're not who your job description tells you you are. The second thing is, what do I think of myself, and why? Why do you think of yourself that way? But what do I think of myself, and why? And then the third question is, do I like myself? Why or why not? If you don't like yourself, why not? Now, those are all very, very powerful in and of themselves as well when you really go within and you search for the truth, the honesty about these 3 questions. And no one has to know. This is you finding out about your limitations, maybe your barriers, maybe your obstacles, and then clearing them away, because that is what we are all here to do, is to journey to finding our soul, our higher self. And that part of us is always in communion with God, with our essence, with universal intelligence, with our source. And we remember that we're perfect when we are there in that consciousness at that time. But I also understand that that's very hard to always keep that. But ultimately, we are perfect. We just created a human lifestyle and thinking pattern and stuffed it into the unconscious. And what we're doing right now is bringing all that up, because when you bring it up and bring it out, it no longer is unknown. And you can't fix anything unless it is revealed, unless it is known. So this is why we are looking at these things. Okay, the other thing that I'm going to work on today, and we're just going to touch this a little bit because I want to do a whole video on it, is fear. All right, the information that I share with you comes from probably authors that you love and know about. Louise Hay, Carolyn Mays, Wayne Dyer, of course Deepak Chopra. In some ways he is in this workshop, and someone that I was introduced to on the radio when I interviewed him, and that is Gerald Jambalski. He had 2 major books, Teach Only Love and Change Your Mind, Change Your Life. And he is the founder of Attitudinal Healing. And his concepts, which other healers and practitioners and psychologists kind of agree with, some say 4, some say 2, but getting back to Gerald Jambalski, he believes there are 2 emotions, and that is love and fear, and that all other emotions stem from that. So we either come from a place of love or we are coming from a place of fear. And fear really is limiting. Now, I really don't need to say this, but I do want to say that fear is very helpful because of the fight and flight, which is in our DNA. It's protecting us, as well as when intuitively our gut, or we know this is not right, I need to be protecting myself, leave this. That is also a wonderful way to experience fear in order to stop anything from harming us or from being harmed. But fear also comes when we don't have good self-esteem, because, as I said earlier, everything comes from love or everything comes from fear. And if we have low self-esteem, we usually don't really love ourselves or come from a place of love. We come from a place of being critical. And being critical and fearful really do walk hand in hand. So if you experience fear in your life anywhere, you are experiencing the following: failure, excuses, avoidance, and repetitive patterns. So let me repeat that. Wherever you experience fear in your life, you also experience failure, excuses, avoidance, and repetitive patterns. So, one more thing to write down in your notebooks is, where in my life am I fearful? And that one is a little tough. That one is a little tough. I mean, you might get 2 or 3 immediately that jump out at you, that you're fearful of, and that could be, I'm fearful of snakes. But does that limit you in anywhere in your life? Has that made you fail in any way of your life? Not really. But look at those fears where these things have been played out. And that's going to help you locate those fears. Love to dialogue a little bit more with you. That is the problem by doing a YouTube video and not being in a classroom, is you can't dialogue back and forth. But I would love your comments. Also, I'm going to give you my email address if you do want to do a little bit more sharing or dialoguing or have some questions, and we'll take it from there. Again, I really appreciate you following me and listening to this video. It's all intended to be helpful. Thanks, everyone. Go in peace and love. Till next time. Bye for now.